Afternoon everybody, Rich here, back for another video for the Diecast F1 review. Here today is the McLaren MP4-24 from the 2009 Formula 1 World Championship, and this is the Lewis Hamilton version, and of course it's car number 1. The first car after Lewis Hamilton's his first World Championship, of course. And it's fair to say that this car was an absolute lemon initially. The team started off the season with a really not to say badly designed car, but there were a lot of shortcomings in the downforce department. The car really was off the pace and really lacked drivability. You can sort of tell that when you look at the car during the qualifying sessions. The car really did not look good. It was sort of running on three wheels through the corners. It really didn't work very well at all. But it really is a tribute to how good McLaren and Lewis Hamilton were at the time. Lewis Hamilton is still good, but McLaren really have dropped the bollocks since this season. Since 2013 rather. The 2009 season, although they started off really at the back of the grid, by the end of the season the car was the fastest, or one of the fastest, if not the fastest cars on the grid. As I say, by the Hungarian Grand Prix onwards, the car was in the top three. It won two races, the Hungarian and what was the other one? I can't remember the other one. It's Singapore, wasn't it? Singapore Grand Prix that the car won. And it really just goes to show how good McLaren can turn around a bad car in a crisis at that time. They don't seem to know how to do that now. It also shows how good Lewis Hamilton is as well. After 2 years running at the front of the grid in the best car, being given a slow car and having to work with it really showed how good a driver he is. Putting the car in some pretty unexpected places, running in the top. He was running in the top three in the first round after qualifying pretty dismal, but some more controversy and things got in the way involving the safety car and things like that. But 2 wins throughout the season. There could have been more podiums throughout the year, but driver error and things like that got in the way. Namely, third place went awry rather at the Italian Grand Prix on the last lap when Lewis binned it on the last lap. Also, they could have won at the European Grand Prix as well at I think it was Valencia, but a botched pit stop cost them that one. But yeah, it really was a testing year for McLaren. It really showed how good they were, and of course showed how good Lewis Hamilton was. Heikki Kovalainen in the other car though didn't fare too well. He really struggled throughout the season, retiring on the first lap of the Australian Grand Prix. Excuse me. After a collision, not his fault. But then spinning off on the first lap at the next Grand Prix in Malaysia pretty much was his fault, spinning off on his own. And not really recovered throughout the season. A lot of mistakes throughout the year, namely at Monaco. But he picked up a handful of points. But he was on his way out at the end of the season. But really, it really was Lewis Hamilton's year. Well, show the world how good he really was. And he showed it. So that's pretty much the lowdown on the car itself. Excuse me. Onto the model, the box anyway. It's a dealer edition version. It's the sort of box you pick up at the Mercedes dealerships at the time. There's no markings on the box to say it's a McLaren. All there is, it says Motorsport there, if you can read it, and it says Mercedes-Benz on the top. There's no other writing on the box at all, except on the bottom, which says, it does say McLaren Mercedes MP4-24 on the bottom, but the box is not very good. It's not a brilliant box. And then later on the Mercedes cars are put in these boxes as well. I think it was 2010 or 2009, 2010 show car and 2011 car. I think Mercedes team had these boxes, but they're not really that good. Showing how bad they are, I've just taken out the box. The internals of the box are fine because it's a polystyrene base, but if I take the car out of the box a minute and put it to one side, you really see it's not the standard of a Minichamps box. It's just very thin card, and it tears very easily as well. It's a bit really dirty in there as well, so that's not too good. And to show how bad this is, you can see it's torn there, so that was torn before I got it, by the way. I bought this car at Model Zone. Well, I say Model Zone. I bought it online from their website, Model Zone website. For those of you who aren't familiar what Model Zone are, they were a chain of model shops throughout the UK which went bust a couple of years ago. I think I was one of their last online customers because I pretty much bought this just before they went into administration, and it's kind of unusual to get this model from Model Zone, considering it's a dealership edition and not a proper Minichamps release. Or it is a Minichamps release, but not in a proper Minichamps box. But apart from that, not much else to say. Now, on the internals of the box are polystyrene, quite well moulded, and hug the car quite nicely. You know, the car's in there quite nicely, and you can see the car there. It's got a little plastic base for the front wheels as well, and that's pretty much it. It's got a couple of screws on the bottom as you'd expect, and not much else to say about it at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'll do a quick jump cut when I take the car off the base, and I shall return as I went. So back in a moment. Okay, back again. Now here's the car in all its unboxed glory. A very nice model it is indeed, and yeah, it's one of the Minichamps final models compared to the MP4-24, which I reviewed the other day or yesterday. This one is much stronger. It doesn't feel cheap in the suspension department. Anyway, the suspension is actually quite stiffly put together. But compared to the previous car, there's no flippy up bits and things like that because of the new rules. Basically, wider front wing, taller, narrower rear wing, and the bodywork is clean. No loose bits that will break off just by sneezing on them. But overall, it's not a bad model. The only issue I have with this car, and also a lot of cars throughout 2009, is these stupid bloody front wheel rims. These well, not spinners really, they're just discs that sit over the front rims, and they look ridiculous. I really wish they'd done away with them earlier, because it really does detract from the look of this car. They just, no, they don't look right at all. There's none on the rear though. The rears are all open and showing off a nice black rim there. Yeah, not too bad. Just got the working steering on this car, although it's not very steerable. It's quite stiff there, but never mind. The only real downside to, well, apart from those rims, the only real downside is the flexibility of the front wing. The front wing does feel a bit loose, mainly because of how wide it is, and it's only got hasn't got any strength on the back part of it. It's just a single plane which is holding it together really. But apart from that, not too bad. Got a nice sculpted nose. I like the curvature of the nose. It really made a change from the previous years. Really drop down nose, which I kind of didn't really like on the modern cars. It didn't look right. I like the higher noses, kind of like this car. But not too bad otherwise. There's a bit dusty in there actually. I think that box doesn't really hide the dust or keep the car away from the dust very well. It's not very airtight, so all the dust's got in. We'll just do a quick review around the back to see how narrow the rear bodywork of the car is. We'll just tip it up there. So you've got Santander on the rear there. You've got the rear bodywork, which is tightly compact around those exhausts. Nicely done there. The rear floor is cut there. Also the same on the other side. Just do a quick look underneath and just pin which way round it goes. So you've got the usual bits on the bottom there. You've got the McLaren MP4-24 there, Minichamps brand there, and also the 118. And also the change of the year, or change throughout the season, was the diffuser, or change from the previous season. The diffusers are much bigger and much more interesting to look at. If I try and put this down without dropping it. Gunk, there we go. And kudos to Minichamps as well for doing the paintwork quite nice. Seems to be much better applied compared to the previous car. More shiny and doesn't seem to blemish too much either. A bit more detail in there as well. There's a bit more bloody dust on there. So there's a bit more detail with the joins in the bodywork. There's still no rivets on the bodywork though. Also the rear wing, the gills in the rear wing are a solid piece rather than being vented like on the real car, but not a big issue. But yeah, overall it's not too bad. There is another issue. I keep saying the only issue. There is another issue with this car, is that it's the early season version. From I think it was the British Grand Prix onwards, where all the updates were added to the car, or was it a German Grand Prix? I'm not sure, but it's one of those two races. The bodywork, basically all the rear bodywork, including the engine cover, changed to make the car more stable, and it really did look very different from the bodywork we have on this model. And it's a real shame Minichamps didn't go ahead and make the a late season version of this car, but not a big issue. You know, it's still the MP4-24 at heart, and Yeah, not much else I can say about it, but it's just a shame that Minichamps don't capitalise on the changes in the bodywork or body styles, especially with their 94 cars as well, when the cars changed constantly throughout the year. Something that really could have been capitalised on. So you've got the nice angle there, and it really is a change from the previous year's cars, with the much longer, they seem longer anyway, the cars, they seem much longer with the narrow bodywork, they seem much less cluttered, more retro looking, and from that angle it is a very nice looking car, or from all angles really. It's just the only detraction is the wheel hubs, which really let it down. Decal wise, they're not going to peel off, they're quite well attached. The only issue with the decals I have is on the nose, where they're a bit flaky, and I think you can really tell that the red decal around the nose has started to, you can see the crack there, there's a little bit of a mark there, where the decal started to lift. But apart from that, all the decals are nicely attached and are not going to peel off just by breathing on them. So there's a bit of a buff up and they'll clean up nicely. So there's a lot of dust on this thing, I don't know why. Crappy box, like I said at the beginning, I think. But yeah, there's also a show car version of this car released for 2010 as well, which featured again Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button in the car. The only real difference is, of course, is the number on the car. 2 for Hamilton, 1 for Jenson Button, and also the wheel rims are different. The wheel covers on this car, on the show car, have been removed, and the rims have been painted in chrome rather than black. So that's really the only difference for this car and the show car for next season. So not much else I can really point out on this car. The quality of it is very nice. Like I said at the beginning, there's nothing on here that's going to snap off apart from the front wing, which being a bit fragile. The rear wing is rock solid, very thick rear wing end plates which really hold it together. And the suspension is quite stiff as well. The rear wheels, they don't really want to turn, but they are at the moment because it's on a smooth surface, so they're actually gripping quite nicely. So you can play with it. It's not scraping the ground either. Like the last model where the suspension had collapsed a little bit and the splitter was dragging on the table, which is not a good thing. I hope it didn't actually damage the table, but never mind, just a quick polish and it'll be fine. Also got a few different decals compared to the previous car. Most notably is the high voltage one, the KERS symbol, because of course the first year of the KERS devices. Of course, it's all now integrated into the hybrid engine system now, isn't it? Sorry, power units. They no longer call them engines, do they? Of course, the power units these days, the KERS and ERS and all that shit is all integrated into the engine, so there's no such thing as the novelty of what was KERS. So that was that. So the KERS at the time, seemed a novelty. It had reliability issues as well, because most notably, I think Kimi Raikkonen's KERS system blew up during practice for the Malaysian Grand Prix. I think it was practice or qualifying. I'm not sure, but it blew up in his face, set the fire extinguishers off, and it looked quite funny. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't for him. Yeah, KERS for that year. I think only McLaren and Ferrari used it all season. I think BMW started off with it and ultimately gave up with it. I don't think anyone else bothered with it. I think just McLaren and Ferrari continued with it. And Ferrari used it to good effect at the Belgian Grand Prix. Which I will do a review of that car as well at a later date. But overall, like I said before, it's not a bad model. It's very heavy as well. It's quite chunky and put together. I should do my usual routine of doing the close-up of the cockpit. I'll just zoom in there. Oh, too far. That's it. No painted buttons on the steering wheel. They are sort of moulded on there. There's no detail on the dashboard. Well, it's moulded detail, but there's no paint applied, which is a shame, but oh well, never mind. Just turn the model around again and get a quick look at the driver. Lewis Hamilton sat in there. Very nicely it is as well. I just noticed this camera's getting very hot as well, I don't know why. Hope it's not going to explode. But apart from that, yeah, this is a very nice model, and I really would recommend getting hold of it. Rarity of the model, I can't really say it's a rare model. It's not a rare model to say, but I think the dealership edition, which is of course this one, I think it's slightly rarer. The Heikki Kovalainen version is available, come and goes. It's available, what's the word for it? it's common as mud basically. The Hamilton version I think is slightly more sought after, of course, it being Hamilton, but the Kovalainen version you're going to pick up pretty easily. Price ranges, if you're buying on eBay, you tend to buy them for about £30–40 for the Kovalainen version and a bit more for the Hamilton version. It varies on the day. It's like any model. They have their good days and have their bad days, but as I say, that they're not overly overpriced and they're not overly rare either. But be careful though, you could be picking up the show car, which I mentioned before does have silver rims compared to this one where it has black rims. So be careful if you don't want the show car. Show cars are a bit of a waste really, and I will get onto the subject of show cars at a later date as well, because I've got a few of those as well. But anyway, that's my review for the MP4-24. Hope you enjoyed that. Like I said before, if you want a request for a review, like this one was, I think it was J Driver 6 who requested this one, and if you have a request for a model you want reviewed, then I shall see if I have it and then I will review it. So that's that. So this is Rich signing off, logging off, disappearing, and I shall return with another review. So bye for now.